Welcome to BDI Briefs. This is another exciting installment where we take a brief look at important issues about the emotional side of living with diabetes and working in diabetes. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Dr. Bill Polonsky, President of the Behavioral Diabetes Institute, and Dr. Susan Guzman, Director of Clinical Education at the Behavioral Diabetes Institute. Both are world-renowned diabetes psychologists and two of my favorite people to talk with. My name is Scott Johnson. I have lived with diabetes for over 40 years and have been active in the diabetes social media space and industry for a long time. And with introductions out of the way, Bill, what are we talking about today?
Thanks, Scott. Well, I want to bring up a subject that really doesn't get enough attention. And this has to do with what happens to people with type 2 diabetes when they're first diagnosed, the day they first discover that they have type 2 diabetes. And often not appreciated is what a very difficult moment this is. There's often a very strong emotional response and often a very strong negative emotion. People feeling frightened about what this means for my future, about how other people are going to see me. Worries about just the disappointment and the discouragement that I thought I was doing everything as well as I could. And how could this be? This sense of mortality. Is my life going to be shortened? So many strong emotional responses that, if not really ever addressed, really can lead to people not really engaging with their diabetes in an effective manner. So it can lead to people saying, I'm not going to think about it, and can lead to really bad outcomes over the course of time. So as healthcare professionals, we know we have this special moment when we are sitting with someone who's first learning to have type 2 diabetes. How we talk about that with people can have an enormous impact. And the reason we're talking about it today is, as we've been going through the recent literature, I was really struck by a series of recent articles, small qualitative studies that comes from our colleagues. I'm going to tell you the first name of the author here. I'm terrified I'm going to mispronounce this, but I think it's pronounced Boakye. It's spelled Boakye. So she and her colleagues have really put forward about these three wonderful articles that have been published over the past few years that really have highlighted, first of all, how very common these really profound and worrisome negative emotional responses to the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes can be. And also the importance of them also mentioning how rarely these feelings are ever addressed, ever brought out, ever asked about with their healthcare providers. And how common it is for people not just to be frightened and worried about the future, but feeling abandoned with their type 2 diabetes. It's like not really quite sure what they need to do next, and if there's anyone really on their side that's really supporting. And she and her colleagues have highlighted in these articles about really what patients want and what they need, how they want to be asked about some of their feelings about learning they have diabetes, to have their questions answered and to be offered better support. So I highly recommend you check out some of these articles that are in Clinical Diabetes and Diabetes Spectrum Path, just published over the past couple of years. Bottom line, what these articles have told us brings up something that we've actually known from years, that there's this enormous problem and we can do better. But what should we do and how do we go about that? Now, I'm kind of proud to say we have looked at this over the years, my colleagues and myself, over the past few decades. In fact, way long ago, way back in 2017, we actually published the first in a series of articles where we had surveyed more than 3,500 people around the world. It was from 26 countries. And we asked them, these were all people with type 2 diabetes, about what happened to them when they were diagnosed, both good and bad. And specifically, we wanted to know what happened to them in their interactions with their healthcare providers. And one of the things we focused on is what happened at those moments that was really good for you, that helped you to feel okay about living with type 2 diabetes over the course of the next few years, and actually taking on the tasks of type 2 and feeling okay about it and being able to succeed. And in our studies, there are really these two elements that stood out. And when I tell you, you're going to go, well, of course, but it's hard often to bring into practice. And one is the degree to which healthcare providers managed to put forward messages to these newly diagnosed patients that were encouraging, to let people know that this is not a death sentence, that you have type 2. Odds are pretty good here in the 21st century. Odds are good you could live a long and healthy life with diabetes with good care effort. And providing the sense of encouragement about what type 2 means and how you can do, but also doing it, and this is the second point, in a collaborative fashion. So not just telling people this, but having a conversation, asking people what their concerns, asking them what their questions are, making sure that people knew that as best as possible, person and their healthcare team are going to do this together. They're going to meet again soon. We're going to see where we go next. We're going to try to put together a plan that's doable for you. And those two elements, as it turns out, made an enormous impact on helping people be successful over time. Now, in these recent articles from Boacheng and colleagues, and again, just in case any of she or her colleagues are listening now, I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. They've really done a nice job in one of the last articles about putting forward these key themes about what we as healthcare providers need to do with our patients. It's from their 2022 article in the first figure. And this really seems to follow nicely from our own paper. And it's about the importance of doing this, not just to tell people this, but as a conversation. So I want to take a moment and talk about what they put forward in this lovely figure. And I can't do it as well as my colleague, Dr. Guzman. So Susan, please take us through a little bit of what's on this table.
Yeah, this table actually gives ideas of what actually you can say as the healthcare professional. And the first one is when somebody is diagnosed, you really want to communicate a message of hope and that destigmatizes the experience and also recognizes there's lots of tough feelings that go with that diagnostic experience of hearing, gee, what? I have diabetes. So it's recognizing with empathy that, people are hearing bad news. Then also saying, this is not your fault and diabetes is manageable. And then following very much the Intro-DIA study that Bill just described, you're working on a plan for working together with the person that feels doable for them. And there's some specific ideas of how you can even communicate that. But recognizing that people don't often want to take action right away. They need a little bit of time to process the information that now they have diabetes and following up with them in a reasonable time frame to say, here are resources that can help you, that maybe you're not ready to take action today, but let's follow up in a couple of weeks and then building on that progress over time.
Scott, I know you have type 1 diabetes and we're here talking about type 2, but like everybody else, you went through some experience of being diagnosed and you chatted with many people through your own blog who were diagnosed with type 1 and type 2. I'm just wondering how all this strikes you. Does it make sense? Do you see what's been missing for folks? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely makes sense to me. I often think about the experience of someone newly diagnosed with any type of diabetes, really, but take type 2 just for example. They're often in with a family practice or general practitioner, and they learn they have diabetes, and they're sent out from that appointment, and sometime later in that day, they have to face their first meal now living with diabetes. And I just imagine how terrifying that is to deal with that, not having had any education yet or really knowing what that means. So I think this makes a lot of sense and really hits home for me.
Thank you. What we see, as you just saw and what Susan presented from that lovely article, these elements that we want to make sure we share with our patients who are newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I just want to remind you, it's not a matter of just telling people stuff, but it's how we make this a conversation, a two-way conversation, so that we make sure we're addressing people's concerns. And following a similar path, I'm kind of proud to let you know that here at the BDI, we put together a booklet many years ago that tried to address many of these particular issues. And it was booklet specifically for people with type 2 diabetes who were newly diagnosed, because we saw this issue. And we saw this issue not just with people being concerned, freaked out, and not knowing what to do, but sometimes being overwhelmed with information about what to do. And also led them to feel paralyzed and not sure where to go. So this booklet is called the Don't Freak Out booklet. And it's freely available on our website. You can print out a PDF or you actually order copies in the booklet form. And you can find this on our website, but I want to take you through a little bit of the booklet because, again, I think it's so representative of what we're talking about today and how useful it can be. Now, to be fair, it's just a little booklet. So I like to think of it as not just for someone to look at and read, but in terms of how this can work in a conversation with one's healthcare provider, to look at some of these issues and to talk about them together. So here's just a few of the 10 tips, 10 things we think people need to know when they're first diagnosed. So just randomly, let's start with number 2, one of my very favorites, which is titled, "This Isn't Your Grandmother's Diabetes." And I'm sure this is going to make sense to you. I already said this a little bit earlier. It's this idea that if you've only known about type 2 diabetes because you've seen something terrible happen to somebody in your family years ago, that's then. This is now the 21st century. And again, the message we put forward here at the BDI is so clearly over and over again. And with what we call evidence-based hope is that we know that with good care and effort, odds are pretty good you can live a long life with diabetes, with type 1 and type 2. And that's what we're trying to get at with this particular item. So that's number 2. Number 3, it's called Diabetes is Not Your Fault. Susan, you do this better than me. Tell us a little bit about why this issue is so important.
Now, we know this. The stigma around diabetes is pervasive and profound, and feeling blamed when you have diabetes, both when you get it and for people who aren't reaching treatment targets, really feel shamed, blamed, and judged. This is really getting at pushing back on that idea that diabetes is not your fault. Nobody chooses to have diabetes, and really rethinking it as something that you now have, and there's a lot that you can do to manage. So push back on shame and blame, and also accept now that you have it, there's a lot you can do.
Thanks, Susan. And let's just mention one more of the 10 items here, and that's actually another one of my favorites, which is number 6. And, well, I think I just like the picture more than any of the other pictures we have in our booklet. But it really gets at another issue that oftentimes people will worry about when they're first diagnosed, which is, how is my eating going to be restricted? And so you can see the title here. No, you won't be limited to eating nuts, twigs, and birdseed for the rest of your life, right? That we know things are doable. I mean, know that here in the 21st century, we have ways to make it possible, even for one to eat in moderation, to eat the things that you would love. Changes are likely to be needed if you want to be successful, but you're not going to have to live in a state of deprivation. It's just not true. In fact, we know a diabetes-friendly way of eating is, a healthy way of eating, young for all of us. So I encourage you to check out our 10 Things booklet. If you're a healthcare provider, think about how you can use that in conversation with your patients, especially when they're newly diagnosed, because we see this as such an important moment that doesn't get enough attention. So again, let's all do our best, both person with type 2 diabetes and healthcare provider, just think harder about how we can make this better for that moment when you first learn you have type 2 diabetes. Even if you're a busy healthcare provider and time is limited, we can do better. It's an important moment. What happens in that moment can reverberate over the course of years. I encourage all of you to consider it, think about it. Let's all get more creative. So thanks for listening. Scott, take us home.
All right. Big thanks to everyone watching. And thank you too for just shining some light on these important moments in the experience of living with diabetes and helping us all see that we can live well with diabetes.